How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another video. Today's topic is about how long do the negative items really stay on your credit report for. Whether you have collection accounts from 2019, a previous bankruptcy, a late payment, or just debt that has been discharged, you don't really know what the timeline is, and you're kind of curious on how long these items are going to stay on your credit report for. So there's a standard rule with credit reporting agencies, and that's the minimum of 7 years are typically when the items remain on your credit reports. Some items can remain up to 10 years depending on what type of items they are, specifically like public records, which are typically bankruptcies, whether they're chapter 10s, 11s, chapter 7s. However, the standard item protocol is that it remains a maximum of about 7 years. And these include late payments, collection agencies. Your inquiries are typically 2 years long. However, the standard amount of negative items that are typically non-public records would stay on for about 7 years max. So what falls under the 7-year rule? Typically, you're looking at, once again, late payments that are 60, 30, 90 days, charged off accounts, collection agencies, repos that are pretty much standardized in terms of a 7-year timeline. And this is thanks to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, where the law states that you have a maximum of 7 years that these negative items can typically stay on your reports. So when does the clock start ticking when it comes to calculating those 7 years or the 10-year mark? Typically, it's based on the date of your first delinquency. So the first time you're late is the date in which the clock starts to tick. So for example, if you were late 30 days ago, that was your first late payment, starting from that 30-day timeline for the next 7 years is typically the time in which your negative items will stay posted. And unfortunately, this is a misunderstood situation. For a lot of people, don't know how to start the proper structure on learning when the 7-year timeline starts. So once again, it's based on the date of your first delinquency. There's also a myth that if you pay your collection agencies or the accounts within collection, that the clock restarts. And the reality is that's a false myth. There's no such thing as a clock restarting if you decide or agree to create an arrangement with a collection agency and if you start paying them. The reality is it's based on the date of first delinquency. It's important to remember that because by law, your timeline is protected. According to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA for short, even if you pay a collection agency, it doesn't reset the clock. And by standard definition, once again, it's based on the date of first delinquency. Now, going into bankruptcy, you have a 10-year timeline, and that's based on Chapter 7, right? Liquidation. But if you do a reorganization, which is basically organizing your debt or creating a payment plan with creditors, that typically can last up to 10 years. The beautiful thing about that, the creditors that are listed as part of your bankruptcy typically will remain for the 7-year timeline. They still have to follow federal law, and the timeline is still protected by law. So the creditors included in bankruptcy will have a maximum time frame of 7 years to stay on your credit reports. Now there's a funny thing that happens. Let's assume you have a positive account or credit account that you closed recently. The beautiful thing is even after you close them and there's no activity on that credit account, it can remain in your credit report for up to a maximum of 10 years. So positive accounts can still remain up to 10 years even if you have zero activity with an account that you recently closed. As I mentioned earlier, you have your inquiries, the hard inquiries that are remaining on your credit reports for a maximum of 2 years. So let's assume you apply for credit today and the first inquiry shows up today. You have a maximum of 2 years in which those inquiries will automatically be removed. Now, there are some practices with debt collectors that are frowned upon by the authorities, namely for the Fair Credit Reporting Act and the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. A lot of shady creditors will try to re-age your debt as soon as they acquire that debt, and that is illegal. So you have the ability and the right to go ahead and dispute that, and if you notice that these are happening, and let's say the debt collector just took your account and then they aged it based on that age, it's an automatic illegal offense. So you can go ahead and dispute that information and ensure that you highlight and circle out the information that demonstrates that they've re-aged the account so that you have valid evidence in order to dispute that accurately. So when it comes to credit bureaus, they have this automatic deletion system. So a lot of times accounts that are going into the 7-year mark will automatically be purged from the database of the credit reporting agencies. And the same thing for a 10-year timeline. Unfortunately, some of the times you may still have that item lingering about, at which point you notice that it's been about the 7-year mark, or if it's a public record, it's been about a 10-year mark. You have the right to go ahead and dispute it to ensure that you can get those items removed. A simple phone call over the telephone, obviously calling the credit reporting agencies, can solve this issue, or you can simply write to them. Ensure that you have evidence and ensure that the reports that you're using are officially from the credit reporting agencies. You can get free copies at annualcreditreport.com or go directly to the credit reporting service centers and access them to dispute it online. So there are some early deletion strategies that you can execute. For example, a goodwill letter. Now, unfortunately, the success rate on these are anywhere between 10 to 30%. So they're not the best strategies. However, if you have a good standing relationship with some of those creditors and you've been them for at least 24 to 36 months, which is 2 to 3 years, and you've been late that one time or even the second time, you can go ahead and contact them by writing to them requesting a deletion or a goodwill adjustment or curing a default situation just because it has been a circumstance, unfortunately. Now, if you're not successful with that, then we're going to try our secondary patterns of deletion or second method if you're unsuccessful with your goodwill letter. Our second strategy revolves around looking at inaccuracies within your credit reports and then disputing it based on the inaccurate information. A lot of times you will find that accounts that are listed improperly, they're missing information, they're not succinct across all three credit reports, specifically if they're reporting to all three. The dates are off, the balances are off, the payments are off, the limits are not reported right. So there's many different reasons as to why an account can appear inaccurate. And according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that is a standard which you can dispute in order to get that negative item removed or corrected to where it should be reflecting accurately, because it is hurting your ability to borrow. Now, there is a third strategy, and it's called pay for delete, typically used for collection agencies. So if you're dealing with debt collectors that have accounts that are on your credit reports and you're having a hard time trying to get inaccurate information deleted, that, everything is accurate with these guys and they're still reporting, your objective is, if you really want to work with them or negotiate with them, you can request a pay per delete. So essentially writing to them stating that you have interest of paying them down in order to completely remove the negative item. Typically, I would have written documentation kind of exchanged between mail so that you have evidence that they agreed to do so. And at which point, if they do, then you have the ability to go ahead and provide that as evidence according to the credit reporting agencies, and then go ahead and leverage that in order to get the negative item removed should they fail to do it according to the agreement that you both have. So there is a thing called the diminishing return principle, or the diminishing score principle. So the older the negative accounts, the less they will hurt. And that's a real factor. For example, accounts that are 2 months old will hurt more, such as collection accounts. But however, they've been in your account for 5, 6, 7 years. The typical, obviously, within a 7-year timeline, the negative item should typically fall off. But anytime before that, the impact is less, but not significantly less. You still want to get rid of those negative items. You still want to fix that strategy to maintain good credit. However, the impact is diminishing. So as long as the negative item is not recent and it's been a few months, years, or a couple of years, you should be all right. Now, the ability to go ahead and dispute it according to inaccuracies or a series of strategies we've discussed prior in this channel should be able to help you maintain a solid credit score and get back to your way to restoring your credit. Now, with all that said, you shouldn't wait for your credit to get fixed. While you're doing disputes on the side, while you're trying to maintain your credit and trying these strategies that we discussed in this channel to go ahead and fix that, I would strongly encourage you guys to start building credit and look at alternatives to restore your credit, or work with existing creditors to buff up your profile, such as increased utilization while using very small balances within those accounts, because utilization does play a huge factor in how your credit score is ranked. Another thing I would encourage you guys to do is, if you haven't joined our free community for credit, go ahead and do so. It's in the description of this video, and the link is also provided. It's part of the school platform, so you have access to our weekly Q&A calls where you can ask questions, get clarity, and so on and so forth. And with all that said, I hope this video gives you some insights and clarity on timelines in which the negative items stay in your credit report, and what are some of the strategies you can deploy to go ahead and get rid of them. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye for now.